TASS news agency is also reporting that the head of Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, reported the liberation of the southern parts of Dmitrov. So Dmitrov is Mirnograd, yes. So Russian armed forces have liberated the southern part of the town of Dmitrov, which is Mirnograd, located right next to Pokrovsk, which is already liberated by Russian forces, accounting for more than 30% of the city's total buildings. This was announced by Chief of General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, Army General Valery Gerasimov, during an inspection of the Center Group's command or combat missions. Right, so approximately 30% of buildings in Mirnograd are under Russian control now, mostly on the southern part of the city, right? And Russian troops are advancing in the northern part of the city also. Although, as I said many times before, of course, Russian troops will take whatever time is necessary while finalizing the clearing operation. I have some update about Mirnograd that I will share in a minute, but also we have this report, dear friends, from TASS news agency that Russian armed forces liberated Novodanilovka settlement in Zaporizhzhia region, which is a big deal, by the way, very big deal, right? Settlement is located on the southern side of Orekhov, central areas of the Zaporizhzhia sector, and I predicted, isn't it, that it will not take too long before Novodanilovka will be liberated by Russian troops. I was constantly reporting about progress in this area, and now we have this breaking news, even I will say, in terms of Zaporizhzhia sector. And also, Russian armed forces liberated Chervonaya settlement in Donetsk People's Republic. This is happening in just past 24 hours. That's when Defense Ministry confirmed this information. And on top of that, we have this report that Russian armed forces also liberated Ostapovsk settlement in the Dnipropetrovsk region. And well, if I may, let me now go through map and show you all the areas that I just mentioned, and there are some and share information about some others too. So when it comes to Kherson, let's start with Kherson region. So when it comes to Kherson region, your friends, lately, even though on the ground there might be no major changes right now in terms of line of contact, but lately, in past several days, Russian armed forces significantly increase our level of airstrikes in Kherson direction, level of artillery strikes. Something is going on there. Something is going on there, and already some experts are beginning to predict that maybe Russia is about to launch some sectoral scale offensive on the right bank, towards the right bank of the Dnieper River in the Kherson region. So maybe this is going to happen, maybe not, but I'm just letting you know that Russian militaries, Russian Air Force, and their artillery did become very active in Kherson direction. So maybe in upcoming days, something big is about to happen in this area. In Zaporizhzhia direction, your friends, well, Russian troops are finalizing clearing operation in Stepnogorsk still, according to reports. In town, in these high-rise apartment buildings, significant number of Kiev regime's troops are blocked, right? But reports are that city itself is completely encircled by Russian forces. Once Stepnogorsk will be fully liberated, well, one might argue that operational space will open for Russian troops, and from that point on, we might start talking about Russian offensive in Zaporizhzhia direction itself, right? There is still about 20 kilometers from Stepnogorsk to Zaporizhzhia, right? But 20 kilometers, even for modern drones, is nothing, right? It's nothing. So some significant developments to be expected in the most western flank of Zaporizhzhia sector. In the central part, of course, main stronghold of the Kiev regime is Orekhov, and this is Novodanilovka settlement that I was predicting that going to be liberated in coming days. I was predicting for the last several days about it, and that's exactly what happened. Russian troops established full control over Novodanilovka. And right now, if you take a look at the map, dear friends, Russian troops are approached Orekhov from southern eastern side, from Malaya Takmachka settlement, which is also under Russian control for about a month now, right? And now Russian troops are approaching from the southern side also, Orekhov. I'm quite sure Russian DRGs already are operating in the vicinity of their city. And I guess before we will see offensive, or major offensive in Orekhov direction itself to liberate the city, Russian troops will launch offensive, local scale offensive in direction of Novoandreevka settlement, which is located on the southern western side of Orekhov. So in upcoming days, probably we will start receiving reports about Russian advances in Novoandreevka also. And once Novoandreevka is in Russian hands, then, well, definitely we can start talking about offensive on Orekhov. Russian troops from these three directions will launch a final assault on Orekhov. And I don't think local garrison gonna be able to hold on to their positions. Local garrison of Western backed terrorist regime of Zelensky gonna be able to hold on to positions for a while, for a long time. And when it comes to Huliai Pole, by the way, offensive operations military operations are already happening inside the city itself, and Russian troops are finalizing clearing operation on the most eastern and southern parts of the city. I guess before end of this week, some 20-30, at least 20-30% of the Huliai Pole are going to be in Russian hands, going to be fully liberated, potentially even more. Kiev regime did deploy in this direction significant number of whatever reserves they have there left, but I don't think those reserves gonna slow down Russian troops very much. I mentioned already about liberation of settlement in past 24 hours in Dnipropetrovsk region also, and this is the settlement, by the way, Ostapovskaya. This is the area that we talking about, and well, this is Dnipropetrovsk region. And take a look at the map, dear friends. This red line is a border between on one side between Zaporizhzhia and on another side, on eastern side, DPR regions and the Dnipropetrovsk region. And look at the bridgehead that Russian military has created. And this is happening in just like past several weeks, right? 4, 5, 6 weeks about. When Russian troops start conducting offensive operations and creating a bridgehead in the Dnipropetrovsk region. And already area under Russian control is quite massive. Now we have this settlement being liberated by Russian forces. I guess offensive will continue, and soon these settlements around Ostapovskaya also will become under full Russian control. And yet again, let me remind you, dear friends, that Dnipropetrovsk region, unlike DPR, for example, is not as heavily fortified. Dnipropetrovsk region mainly is a steppe area. There is not that level of urbanization there as it is in DPR, for example. And once Russian troops will finalize preparation of the ground for a sectoral scale offensive, and once order comes, I think Russian troops will move very fast in the Dnipropetrovsk region, incomparably faster than in other sectors of the front line that Kiev regime was preparing, and NATO, by the way, were preparing for war since 2014. Dnipropetrovsk region is different, and Russian advance is going to be much more rapid there than anywhere else, right, that we see until now. Also, when it comes to DPR now, I already said that Pokrovsk is under full Russian control. Southern part of Mirnograd, neighboring city, by the way, also is under Russian control, and now clearing operation is happening in the northern part of the city. And when it comes to Mirnograd, by the way, some Ukrainian channels, some Ukrainian sources are reporting that allegedly, and yet again, this is Ukrainian sources, so we should take it with a pinch of salt. I don't trust single word that comes out from Kyiv-controlled territory. But nevertheless, I just want to inform you that there are some claims from Ukrainian side that allegedly encircled garrison of Kyiv regime from this northern part of Mirnograd did manage to escape, significant part of it at least. There are different reports. According to some, about 1,000 troops of Kyiv regime managed to escape. I find it very difficult to believe this report that suddenly 1,000 troops rushed to break out of their encirclement, and they succeeded. But anything is possible. If you remember, dear friends, I was saying on several occasions that maybe in attempt to minimize casualties among Russian troops, maybe some negotiations will be held between Russian military leadership and their Kyiv regime, and maybe Russian troops will allow Kyiv regime's forces to escape, to retreat, basically, to leave Mirnograd. And you might say, why would you do this, isn't it? You have 1,000 to 2,000, there is different reports, troops of hostile side encircled. Why you don't destroy all of them? Why you will allow them to escape, right? And the logic behind it could be, as I already said, to minimize casualties among Russian troops. That's one big reason, obviously. And you might say then you can have a counter argument that, you know what, those troops that you just allow to escape will end up on the line of contact again, and you will have to fight them after some time still, which is true in most cases, but not complete. It's not gonna be exactly like that, because those encircled troops, if these reports are correct, and if somehow significant portion of encircled garrison of Kyiv regime managed to withdraw, well, almost all of them probably have some issues with the concussion. Many of them are wounded, and all of them are broken, by the way. All of them are broken psychologically, right? And you think in a month or two, or even 3 or 5 months time, these mentally destroyed, psychologically destroyed troops gonna regain battle capabilities? I mean, seriously, I don't think so. Most likely, those troops that maybe escaped from Mirnograd will serve once they will recover from whatever issues they are facing. Once they will recover, probably they will use in some logistics or some other directions, right? But no longer on the front line, because I don't think they will ever regain actual battle capabilities. Have you seen what is happening when FAB 1500 strikes? Or have you seen what is happening when FAB 3000 strikes? Everyone in certain radius of this explosion has a concussion. Everyone that survives has at least concussion. They need long treatment for that. And everyone who sees aftermath of those strikes needs psychological help, because they are seeing how entire units of their comrades just evaporated. In best case scenario, they might find some fragments of those troops, right? Can you imagine level of impact on psychology that will have on troops, when those troops day in, day out, more and more are scared of any sound whatsoever, because they are beginning to think that any sound they hear is a FAB strike is coming, right? So for how long now these troops experiencing this immense pressure on the psyche? They're not going to be battle capable, by the way, anytime soon or ever, right? And yet again, I am not saying because Russian officials never confirmed, did not confirm nothing about. There are not even reports in Russian segment of internet about partially or somehow some parts of Kiev regime's garrison from Mirnograd escaping. But if there was a behind the closed door, let's say, negotiations between the militaries of two sides, and if Russia even allow some troops to leave their Mirnograd, yet again, first of all, to minimize casualty numbers among Russian troops, that will make sense, by the way, I will say. I would not be critical of such a decision, because yet again, we will save health and the lives of our troops by doing so, when we know perfectly well that these Kiev regime's units that potentially maybe left their area not gonna be battle capable ever in their lives, most likely, majority of them, vast majority of them, right? So maybe, by the way, if information is confirmed, and if Kiev regime's garrison mostly left Mirnograd, northern part of Mirnograd, then I guess we might see finalization of the clearing operation of the town, or maybe even before end of this week, because there are going to be very few troops of Kiev regime left in the town, right, to do some resistance. So that will be indicator. If Russian troops will finalize clearing operation before end of this week, let's say, then in that case we will have a good enough indicator to say that probably there was some talks behind the scenes, and a significant part of this encircled garrison was allowed to escape. But that's my take on all this story, that you might or might not hear on other platforms, by the way. I just shared my take on that. Next is Konstantinovka, by the way. Let's talk about these directions. Yesterday I reported, and there all the time, now last several days, I'm literally on daily basis reporting about progress of the Russian forces on the northern side of Konstantinovka. Russian troops established control over the Klinovaya, over the Bezimyana. Russian troops are getting closer, and probably battles already are taking place for Izhevka settlement. Soon Russian troops going to cut this main supply and support line that connects Drushkovka with the Konstantinovka, and this is a settlement of Chirvone, by the way. This is settlement of Chirvone that has been liberated in past 24 hours. Or let me be more specific, Russian Defense Ministry confirmed in past 24 hours liberation of Chirvone. In reality, maybe this settlement is liberated like 3 days ago, but we did not knew about it because there was no reports. But we know how Russian Defense Ministry operates, isn't it? Sometimes they might take a week even. And there was such instances. If you remember, when we all know that there is too many reports, right, from alternative sources that Russian troops already established control over this settlement and that settlement and that settlement. But Russian Defense Ministry is saying nothing. So day passes, 2, 3, 4 week passes, and only then Russian Defense Ministry will say that yes, Russian forces, as a result of active offensive operations, liberated this and that settlement. This happens every now and then, by the way, because yet again, I don't know what is the calculus behind it, but Defense Ministry is a very conservative institution, and they always take time before making some announcements, right? Also, dear friends, Siversk direction, of course, when it comes to DPR. Well, let me finish on Konstantinovka. I think, as I mentioned already before, Russian troops will establish control over the northern part of a city that is divided by river Krivoy Tarets. I think Russian troops will establish control over the northern part of their city first, and then will begin clearing operation in the southern side. It seems logical to me to go this way. But we will find out. Initiative is in Russian hands, of course, and there are now northern part of DPR where also very significant developments are taking place. in last 24 to 48 hours, according to reports, well, the Russian armed forces established control over the most of the Siversk city, over the most of it. And surprisingly, this map, by the way, is following the developments in this direction. And look, most of the city is already in a gray zone. And Russian troops are in the central part. Russian troops are advancing all over the place, right? And who knows, maybe even before end of this week, Siversk will be under full Russian control. Seems like the regime's garrison in Siversk is just crushed, collapsing in absolute terms, right? Most definitely, Siversk will be liberated before end of this month, before end of this year. But when I see reports about Russian progress in this area, and when I see developments on the map, well, I was a bit surprised. I knew Russian troops were in the northern parts of the city, in the eastern parts, in the southern parts, but suddenly in the last 24 hours, we learned that Russian troops actually controlled more than 50% of the city. So that came as a little surprise. So due to this rapid advance, no one should be surprised if Russian troops will liberate entire city by end of this week even. Also, Russian troops entered their Zakatnaya settlement in between Siversk and Lyman. And these are two major strongholds of Kiev regime in the northern parts of DPR, Donetsk People's Republic. And clearing operation is underway in this settlement, Zakatnaya. Let's see how long it will take before Russian troops will finalize this clearing operation. But this is not all, dear friends. Russian troops are finalizing clearing operation also between Zakatnaya and Serebranka, parts of Serebranka forestry. Right, this part that you see right now on your screen, massive clearing operation is underway in that area, and also Russian troops are intensifying clearing operation in the forestry on the southern eastern side of Lyman city. And take a look at the map, dear friends. It's a massive, very difficult terrain, massive forestry that you see right now. Just look at this, man. It's massive, isn't it? And there are some settlements inside the forestry itself. And for example, we have now reports that Russian troops entered Dnipropetrovsk settlement that is located exactly in this forest. And the northern and eastern parts of Dnipropetrovsk are under Russian control now. And based on the speed of advances of the Russian armed forces, I'm not gonna be surprised if before end of this week, both these settlements, Zakatnaya and Dnipropetrovsk, are gonna be liberated by Russian forces. So situation for Kiev regime's garrison, not just in Siversk, but also in Lyman, is becoming more and more difficult. And once Russian troops establish control over these major strongholds, Siversk and Lyman, then one might argue that a road towards Slaviansk is open. Road towards Slaviansk from the northeastern side. And this is Slaviansk, by the way. You know, Slaviansk Kramatorsk is basically last major fortified area at this point that Kiev regime still controls. Kiev regime and their NATO allies still control in the DPR, Slaviansk Kramatorsk agglomeration. So significant developments are happening there. And well, when it comes to Kharkov region, mainly news is coming from southeastern side of Kupiansk city. Kiev regime's forces on regular basis are conducting counteroffensives, local-scale counterattacks. They want to enter the city and establish their presence there, but they are failing time after time. And well, I guess to finalize clearing operation on the left bank of the Oskol River in this area that you see right now on your screen, I guess Russian side will deploy some reserves, right? Because it's taking quite a time now, really, and to secure Kupiansk, probably we will see some significant activization in this area in upcoming days. And when it comes to northern part of Kharkov region, another area of activities, big activities, well, Russian troops still are finalizing, according to reports, cleaning operations in the Vilcha settlement and Lyman. Oh, this is Lyman village, by the way, not the Lyman city in DPR. In Lyman settlements, I guess liberation of Volchansk, final push to liberate Volchansk, took quite a lot of energy from Russian advancing forces here, and probably they will need a little time to regroup, reorganize, to receive additional reinforcements, right? And then probably we will see final push to establish control over both these villages. Some channels in the Russian segment of internet, some sources were a little quick to announce that both these settlements are already under Russian control, Vilcha and Lyman, but I'm not gonna say so. Russian troops are in both settlements, but I'm gonna exercise restraint for now. I don't know. I don't know if Russian troops are controlling these settlements. Big channels, big military channels, in Telegram, for example, did not yet reported about it. So let's wait. Let's wait. I think it is a probability that before end of this week, Lyman will be under full Russian control, and maybe it will take a few more days to finalize clearing operation in Vilcha. And one should keep in mind that it's a little time-consuming liberation of these settlements, because even before Volchansk was fully liberated by Russian forces, I was reporting about, based on numerous sources, about reports, about information that Kiev regime was deploying significant number of whatever reserves they have towards Volchansk. They were desperate to maintain their presence in the city. They failed, and after that, they were trying to concentrate these reserves exactly in the Vilcha area to maintain their foothold, at least in the Vilcha, this village. And it's not just this village, but surrounding territory is also packed with some hostile troops, isn't it? And therefore, obviously, if you keep in mind that there is drones and artillery and everything, right? Of course, advance does take some significant time. In any ways, initiative is in Russian hands all along the front line. We should expect, I think, some major developments to happen soon in the Kherson direction, because I don't think Russian aviation and Russian artillery become disactive in this direction randomly. There is nothing that happens randomly on the battlefield, obviously. Probably some preparations are on the way, or maybe this is deception. Maybe Russian militaries want the regime to think that Russian troops are about to launch offensive in the Kherson direction, and that will force the regime to deploy more troops into Kherson area, isn't it? The troops that otherwise could be used on some other directions where maybe Russia is actually planning to conduct counteroffensive. So this is military matters is a science, isn't it? It's a science, and that's why I always highlight that I'm no military expert, right? And therefore, my reading of the big picture, my reading of or my understanding of developments on the battlefield should always be taken with a pinch of salt, because, yet again, I'm no military expert and never pretend to be, right? I am reporting about information that is known and sharing my takes, what we should expect, or what we might expect, right? Sometimes I'm correct, by the way, sometimes not, but this happens in any other field, isn't it? Sometimes we are correct, sometimes not. Depends on the level of our knowledge in the field, right? More we know, more often we are correct in our predictions. Anyways, this is it for a short summary, and so yes, let's short summary of the situation on the battlefield. Otherwise, I have like 2,000 of news to share with you, dear friends, still. So, okay, that's been said. Let's continue now with some other stuff. Well, yesterday, number of sources, dear friends, reported that there was a dogfight, right, between the Russian fighter pilot and the fighter pilot of Kiev regime, and the Russian fighter pilot come up on the top And the Kiev regime lost another Su-27 fighter jet, and their pilot, Colonel Yevgeny Ivanov of Kiev regime's air force, was neutralized as a result of this air-to-air combat. Russian Defense Ministry, at least for now, did not share much information. You know how Russian Defense Ministry is, isn't it? They don't really share much information. Why, man? There was a successful air-to-air combat, isn't it? Use this success to share information, boost morale, make a big story, because it is a big story, by the way, right? But yeah, I mean, Russian Defense Ministry just has different priorities. They are focused on the battle, so I can understand, by the way. But I think this is a big story. By the way. And I would love to know more details about this particular air-to-air combat or any other air-to-air combat after special military operation. Of course, we will learn some more about it. And I remind you that according to many military experts and their sources, a longest air-to-air kill was happened during their special military operation, when either Russian Su-57 fifth-gen fighter jet or MiG-31 fighter jet intercepted the Kiev regime's fighter planes some 200 kilometers, further than 200 kilometers. It was a very long shot, by the way, very long shot. Reports are that Russian hypersonic air-to-air missile was used for that interception. So I mean, there is so many stories, isn't it? So many stories of heroism of the militaries and superb professionalism that was demonstrated. And I guess after special military operation will end, we will learn some more, because we need to know our heroes. By the way, Russian pilot who intercepted hostile fighter jet is a hero. Obviously, hero, right? And now we cannot say the name, and I understand why. By the way, Kiev regime is conducting terrorist attacks on Russian militaries, their family members, right? So therefore, information has to be classified for now. But time comes when we will learn. We will learn about thousands of acts of heroism that was committed by Russian troops on the battlefield, on the ground, at the sea, and also in the air. So good news for Russian Air Force, by the way. Yet another successful air combat. I wonder which Russian plane intercepted this Kiev regime's Su-27. Someday we will learn. And I think also interesting report that another 2 U.S. citizens were killed in a zone of special military operation. They were fighting alongside the Kiev regime. And there are also reports are that a Danish citizen was killed. Also, I can give you some details on that. So according to sources, 2 more U.S. citizens, Brian Lionel Zackerley and T. Wingett Jones, who were fighting on side of the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, were killed by Russian fighters in a SMO zone. And their Danish citizen Tristan Karl Pedersen was also neutralized. Well, it is what it is. I cannot say, because I don't know, were these mercenaries members of the U.S. military, U.S. special forces, or Danish special forces, or they were actual mercenaries. They just signed up for some, they went in Kiev control territory and expressed willingness to fight for the Kiev regime. I don't know the details yet, but well, yet another 2 U.S. citizens that were fighting alongside Ukrainian terrorists were eliminated, and another Danish citizen also. Overall number of Western citizens, let's say this way, that were neutralized on the battlefield there is in thousands now, by the way. Is in the thousands, right? Exact number Hard to tell. No one knows probably, with exception of maybe some few people. But it's in the thousands, and I'm saying so because if you paid attention, friends, U.S. Colonel Douglas MacGregor, U.S. retired highly decorated veteran Douglas MacGregor, on several occasions said that Poland alone lost about 10 to 12,000 of its troops, disguised as mercenary, right, while fighting against Russia. So it is in the thousands, right? And it's not just Poland, by the way. It's all NATO countries, almost all NATO countries, that are sending their troops disguised as mercenaries to fight Russia, and all of them have casualties. Most casualties outside of Poland is on part of from NATO, let's say, from NATO countries, is on I think US and UK and France. I mean, these three countries are probably after the Poland, US, UK, and France. They lost quite a lot, hundreds of troops. Yet again, disguised as mercenary, but it changes nothing. It's still their citizens, still their troops, right? Whatever they're gonna call them. So that's the report, sir, dear friends, and this is definitely not the last Western citizens that died by the ear while fighting alongside the terrorists.